We live in interesting times, Mike Feuz.
It is going to get more interesting now.
This is the craziest year and the craziest month that I think I've ever seen.
I'm curious what the October surprise is going to be. How can it top anything else?
I feel like this is an early October surprise.
It was funny. So obviously we're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing away and a vacancy opening up. But the week before, I saw like Trump updated his Supreme Court list. So obviously they knew.
What are you implying?
They knew her health was declining. It was obviously kept under wraps. But so I was like, man, imagine being in those rooms like, all right, we got to get this list going again. We got to pick our top. She's going to pass away. They had to know. Right.
I think they did. And there's a lot to unpack about this. As of this recording, Trump has not announced his pick yet. By the time you're listening to it, he will have announced his pick. But so we can't really speculate on that too much. But I want to talk about the process and what's going on. The first thing is just how I think this is a very revealing moment in a lot of different ways. And the one way it's revealing is that politics is about power, not principle. And you're having all the Democrats are saying the Republicans are hypocrites because they wouldn't confirm Merrick Garland in 2016. And now they're going to confirm whoever Trump nominates. Apparently they have the votes. Romney said he's not going to obstruct. So it sounds like they're going to be able to do it. And so the Democrats are saying, you Republicans are incredible hypocrites. You shouldn't do this. Meanwhile, the Republicans are pulling quotes from Ruth Bader Ginsburg and from Chuck Schumer and all these people and Obama in 2016 saying, you don't stop being president in the last year of your presidency. It's our constitutional right and duty to appoint someone. So both sides have flipped their positions, and they're both trying to call the other side hypocrites. Everybody involved is a hypocrite. Politics is not about principle. It's about power. And I think anyone with a brain can see that this is just whoever's in the majority trying to ram through what they want. And it would be completely the same situation if the roles were reversed. The Democrats would do the same thing.
Yeah, I don't quite understand how it's not. One of our friends, Jack Hunter, said on Facebook yesterday that it's just nauseating that we're pretending that one side's principled and the other side's not. Then the other side is hypocrites. Both sides are complete hypocrites, and it is, to your point, politics is just trying to determine who rules whom. That's all it is.
I think that we'd be better off recognizing that whoever's in power, whatever party's in power, they're going to try to push through their agenda regardless of any kind of principle, and they're going to try to tell you how to live. And that's something we should be wary of. And we shouldn't pretend that, the other side has no morals, but we have all the morals. Politics is just about who has the power.
Yeah, and the Democrats would do the absolute same thing the Republicans are.
Well, they tried to.
And the Democrats had the Senate. Yeah, they would block it.
Yeah.
If they had both seats of power, they would push it through. The Republicans do the same thing. One side's not more principled than the other. Both people with their respective teams like to imagine it because it makes them feel good in the end. But it's just, it's to what it was said. It's nauseating. It's just like let's just call it what it is. It's who has the power. They get a pick. They're technically following the Constitution. You could say, this isn't right. It's too close. Whatever. He's still president until January 17th, 20th, whatever nomination day is. He gets to execute the authority of his office. The Senate has the right to take it up, to vote it down, or to approve it. That's the end of it for it.
Yeah, and as much as I like to adhere to principle and say people should, do what they say they're going to do on election day and be consistent, at the end of the day, I want a Supreme Court justice who is going to uphold the Constitution and protect individual liberty and freedom. And I think I'm more likely to get that with a Trump pick than with a Joe Biden pick. So I'm not too upset about the Republicans being hypocrites, knowing that the other side is equally hypocritical.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I had to pick, I want Trump nominating it. Absolutely. I want an originalist. Democrats aren't fans of originalists. It's just not the philosophy they adhere to. So I'll take my chances with whoever Trump picks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a quick confirmation. And I know Kavanaugh has been a bit of a disappointment. I'm hoping we get someone better than that, someone who's going to actually stick to the Constitution. And you had a thought earlier about what you think the litmus test for a Supreme Court justice should be.
Yeah, I think moving forward, I think the next big hurdle we have that is relatively undecided in the courts, and it's the digital age has created it, is the Fourth Amendment. And I thought that was the biggest problem with Kavanaugh. I felt the circus show that was created, we really missed an opportunity. The Democrats, he has a poor record when it comes to Fourth Amendment. He was intimately involved with the Patriot Act early on in the Bush White House. They could have hammered that and actually done, served liberty and protected the Constitution, but they had to go with some crazy sideshow that just divided the nation further. And I think this time up, I tried to look up Amy Comey Barrett and Barbara Lagoas, who seem to be the top two choices going in right now, what their any Fourth Amendment cases they decide, anything with privacy rights. I couldn't find anything. I didn't do the biggest search, but I searched, Googled, tried different phrases, looked through cases, nothing. I feel like that has to be the biggest question.
You're right. I mean, it's the technological revolution, the information age that we live in has completely changed the nature of privacy and surveillance, and the courts haven't really caught up with it yet. Courts lag behind culture and these type of things, and it's also interesting that it's not a partisan issue. There are plenty of Republicans who are terrible on the Fourth Amendment. There was a case a few years ago where they were trying to get Apple to turn over the contents of an iPhone that was being suspected as part of a crime, and a lot of Republicans said, law and order, we got to do it. A lot of Democrats were against it. A lot of Republicans were against the Edward Snowden revelations and said he's a traitor to his country and he should be prosecuted for that. So there's people on both sides of the aisle who are bad on the Fourth Amendment, and there's people on both sides of the aisle who are good on the Fourth Amendment. But libertarians are pretty good on it and consistent on it, and that's something that needs to be considered because it's not just a one side of the aisle issue.
Yeah, and I don't know. I feel like it's a relatively overlooked. Not many people seem to care about that much because, safety over liberty, I guess, which I would argue against. I don't know why do you think we don't, as a general public, seem to care too much about?
Well, because people
privacy.
give away so much of their information voluntarily for convenience, for things like remember my password on my computer, or keep my shipping information so that I don't have to type it in every time, or I just want to share stuff with my friends on Facebook or on Twitter. So they give away a lot of information voluntarily, and I'm not against that. I think people want to give away their information; they should be allowed to, but they need to know what's going to be done with that information. They need to know when they're in a place that is secure and private and when they're not, and have some kind of delineation there, because otherwise, a lot of information you may not want to get out is going to come back and bite you later on.
Yeah, and I was just reading a recent article too about, I'm forgetting the name of the company. It's like Palinar or something. They're a new defense contractor. It was a Washington Post article probably about a month or so ago about their Silicon Valley company, and they are all into big data, and they're doing this insane amount of data analytics and big data and predictive analytics for the government and three-letter agencies, and they're about to go public here shortly. And it was a very terrifying article, and I was just reading it yesterday, and I was just thinking about the Supreme Court, and this is the issue of the future, is the Fourth Amendment.
Data collection is interesting because there's such a big field of behavioral science, behavioral economics, where they try to use data in order to kind of control people or nudge people in the direction they want them to go in. Murray Rothbard had an interesting article years and years ago about how data collection was the Achilles heel of the government. It was the Census Bureau, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, were the Achilles heel of government, because he says, it's only because they have this information that they're able to do things. If they don't know how much money people make, they can't redistribute wealth. If they don't know who's old, they can't do Social Security. If they don't know, if they have to know things about you in order to implement all these redistributionist programs. And so having less data collection and less information in the hands of government kind of takes away some of their power to mold society in the image that they want it to be, which I thought was an interesting point I hadn't heard made before.
No, I've actually never heard the Murray Rothbard's take on that. That is very interesting to hear. But I don't have a lot of faith that the next judge is going to be strong on the Fourth Amendment. Trump's had a couple opportunities. This Congress, when we had Republican control, and the Democrat Congress, could have gutted a lot of the Patriot Act. No one takes it up. No one's willing to do it. I think the public, and in my perfect world, should become more vocal about this issue, but I don't think the sense of urgency is there. So it is what it is, but I think that should be one of the big libertarian rally cries.
For sure. I mean, this kind of ties into a point I made in a recent article that I just wrote about how the problem with the Supreme Court is that it has become so powerful and it determines so much of what our life is going to be like that people think that this is the end of the world, losing Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and people are freaking out. And it's fine to you idolize someone, you think they were great, you want to mourn them, that's great. But people are saying we're going to burn the country down if Trump replaces her. And you have journalists saying this, very irresponsible talking points about restarting riots and doing all this terrible stuff, because people are so upset because they know that the balance of the court has a profound implication on how people are going to live, what life is going to be like, what the laws are going to be like. And as long as that continues to be the case, people are going to continue to care way too much about this court. and it's going to make everybody angry, and everybody's going to fight each other because if I don't get my way, it has a potential to impact my life in a big way. And it shouldn't be that way. The court is there to interpret the law and say that's unconstitutional, knock that down, but they're not there to make law. They're not there to determine how people live. And it's grown so out of proportion to what it was supposed to be with the way it's defined in the Constitution that I think that's why people are losing their minds over this.
Yeah, and I think before we go any farther, you should need to pour me a drink.
Oh, I totally forgot.
I had a sense of being parched.
Yes,
suddenly
absolutely.
Hit my lips.
So the day before we're filming this was the autumn equinox. So it is now officially fall in D.C., and it's beautiful outside. The weather is gorgeous. So I'm running out of time to drink my Hendrick's Midsummer Solstice Gin, which is a delicious gin. I don't like regular Hendrick's too much because I find it a little too herbal.
I'm not super familiar, so I'm intrigued to try this.
It's a little too herbal, a little too cucumbery, but this one's got more of like I think it tastes like lavender and blackberries. Very lovely, floral, fruity kind of character to it.
I think this is my first time having this. I like cucumber flavored drinks, so I would be intrigued to try the other, but oh yeah, I can definitely smell a lot of the different kind of flavors in there.
As we get further away from the midsummer solstice, I got to get through this bottle. I don't know if they're going to have another seasonal offering in the fall.
So you have to pick up the next seasonal offering?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be pumpkin, because I know how much you love pumpkin drinks.
I don't know if I can join you on a pumpkin drink. I don't know. I've kind of made some pretty strong statements. I feel like I got to actually be principled here, unlike our politicians.
I understand.
But back to your point you were making before I had to pause us to get a refreshment. Why? I mean, I see a lot of my very left-leaning friends. Like, they love the new thing to share on Amy Coney Barrett is that some religious group that she was a part of was the inspiration for The Handmaid's Tales. And they're all writing, oh, we're going to be effed and this and that in a panic. But why? And I agree with you. People see the Supreme Court judge as having an extremely large amount of influence over their lives. I don't know, in your opinion, where did that shift start happening? Why did the courts grab too much power? Do you know too much about that? Or?
I don't know too much about it. I mean, my understanding is that it started around the time of the Great Depression or around the time of FDR when Congress started abdicating their power. And Congress said, we don't want to make these laws. We're going to let the president do them, or the executive branch agencies or the Supreme Court. And that's kind of when it started shifting away from Congress, because Congress is the legislative body. They're supposed to make the laws. But they also have to stand for election, which means if they make an unpopular law, they're going to lose their seat. So they don't want to have to be held accountable for anything they do. So they can say, oh, it wasn't our fault. It was the judges. It was the president. It was something else. So ever since then, Congress has been increasingly devolving their power to other agencies that are less directly accountable to the people, bureaucrats and judges and things like that. So they can do what they want to do, take credit for what they want to take credit for, and have some kind of plausible deniability for stuff they don't want to take credit for. And I think that's really when it started.
So it's back to Congress again, because I was just ranting and raving, and might have been at my own mother, sorry mom, about how Congress keeps abdicating their duty to the executive branch, and that no one should be comfortable with the power the executive branch holds. But so it's the same thing they're doing to the judiciary branch. They're just
absolutely. And I also think this is somewhat of it's a little bit of a revelation for me, and I'm thinking about the failures of democracy here. I think one of the real problems of democracy, which is really being revealed right now, is that I get a vote on how you live and you get a vote on how I live. And if everybody gets a vote on how other people live, then everybody's a potential enemy. You might want me to live the way I don't want to live, and because you get a vote on it, I have to stop you somehow. If we didn't have any vote on how each other lived, we wouldn't be enemies. And I think that's what we're seeing with this polarization right now, where everybody's so angry and so furious and they hate each other. There was a thread I saw on Twitter where people were divorcing their husbands because they support Trump. They said, I told him he either votes for Biden or I divorce him, which is insane. It's the most crazy thing I've ever heard. And I think it's because if you have a vote to try to control how I live, it means you're an enemy and I have to stop you, or else I have to convert you to my side. And I think that's a fundamental problem with democracy, where people get to vote on how each other live their lives and spend their time and what they can do and what they're not allowed to do. Like, we shouldn't have that power over each other. And that's what's dividing people and making everyone angry.
Yeah, yesterday we were kind of talking about that as a group, and I think you pointed out that this year, this past presidency, this whole political climate has really put democracy under a microscope, and we've seen a lot of the flaws. At
Yeah.
least that's what you said in it. And I agree. I don't think democracy is that great. It's just the least not great.
Right. I mean, it's a combination of government being too powerful and the fact that we all get to vote. Because if we didn't get to vote, then you would be no threat to me. I wouldn't have any reason to be against you. I might be against the person making the decisions in the executive branch or something, but I wouldn't be against you because you're in the same boat as everyone else. We're all in this together. So, I mean, I agree. I think it is probably the least bad. I mean, I'm personally in favor of no government at all. I'm an anarchist, and I think we should get rid of it all and have no voting whatsoever. But I realize that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. So democracy's the lesser of many evils. But we definitely need to scale back some of the power that government has over us, because otherwise everyone else is always going to be a threat to your way of life.
Yeah, and I mean, the founders obviously recognize the flaws with pure democracy, and it's why they instituted a republic to keep all the different sects of power in check as best as possible. But I feel like, we've seen recently the 1619 Project, which has sucked up a lot of the media. But I joked, but I was kind of serious that someone should start a 1913 Project to discuss how that year was so pivotal in moving America, I think the biggest leap from a form of a republic to a more closer to a pure democracy with the 17th Amendment, the 16th Amendment, the Federal Reserve, and all of that nonsense.
Yeah, that was a bad year for the republic for sure.
So, I don't know. I feel like we're becoming more and more pure of a democracy. I don't know if we're really a republic anymore. We like to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's more pure democracy, but on the other hand, it's a little more autocratic than it used to be, because you're starting to get these cults of personality around the leaders, where like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Reason had an article about how she has this amazing kind of pop culture persona where she's the notorious RBG and things like that. And because the one person wields so much power, people are either all in on that person and think they're on my team, they're great, they're going to solve all my problems, or they think that they're the devil. And if one person didn't wield that much power, they wouldn't have as much cultural influence. I mean, the worship of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'm not saying anything against her here. I mean, I disagree with some of her rulings, and I agree with some of her rulings. But the kind of cult of personality worship around her reminds me of the kind of thing you see in like North Korea, where they worship the leader, or in Venezuela or something where they worship the leader because the leader is all powerful to determine what your life is going to be like. And that's not what we should have in this country. It's scary.
Yeah, and it's curious because there's so much power that seems to be held by 9 judges, the president, and 2 or 3 members of Congress. Like, Congress pretty much does what the majority and minority leaders say they should do.
Right.
And so it seems we just consolidate, and then we have these bureaucracies that Congress turns over a lot of their power. So now we have unelected gray-suited bureaucrats telling us how to live. So it's interesting the predicament we've gotten ourselves in as a nation that allegedly values freedom and individual autonomy.
Yeah, so I keep hearing a couple of proposals to deal with this. The Democrats are now threatening to pack the court, which is what FDR tried to do. If they win the presidency and the Senate, they want to add a couple of justices to the court to balance out Donald Trump's appointments and just make it more leftist leaning, which is a profoundly dangerous precedent to set. It's a bad idea. I mean, the Constitution doesn't specify how many judges have to sit on the bench, so it just takes an act of Congress to do it, which seems too easy of a barrier to get over to me, especially now that we don't have the filibuster anymore. So that's worrying. But they're making a stupid strategic error, because what if they don't win the presidency? And they have come out and said, when we get in power, we're adding more justices to the Supreme Court. What's to stop Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump from adding more justices to the Supreme Court preemptively, to try to stop them from packing the court when they get into power? And this is just going to be an arms race of who can add the most justices to the court. It's a terrible, terrible idea.
I don't know with that. I mean, obviously there would be a lot of negativity, but eventually maybe we would stop taking the court so serious, because I hate arguments where people are like, well, this ruling in the Supreme Court, so that means it must be right. I'm like, those are infallible human beings. This is a Supreme Court that held up slavery at one point in American history.
True.
I feel like we idolize the institution as a whole way disproportionately than where it should be.
Yeah, maybe if we got to a point where we had like 400 justices on the court, it wouldn't matter that much anymore. No one would really care. But like right now, I think packing the court is a terrible idea, a terrible precedent. I mean, we're in this mess right now because Harry Reid abolished the judicial filibuster in 2013. And you just need a simple majority now to pass things in the Senate. And that's scary. Well, not laws, but to appoint justices. Because then it just switches back and forth with every election. It's a bad idea.
I have enjoyed seeing the Mitch McConnell video clips of him warning the Senate in 2013 that this will come back to get you, and sooner than you think. it's worth a chuckle when you watch it.
Oh,
'cause
well,
it's
everybody saw it
prophetic,
coming,
yeah.
and that's the thing is, like, I'm hoping this will be a lesson. I'm not very optimistic, but I'm hoping it'll be a lesson to the left. And when you consolidate power in the central government, like they always want to do, and they always try to do, eventually the other side gets in power and you're in trouble. And they didn't learn the lesson with Trump. They should have learned. We gave the president all this power. Look, Obama had a pin in the phone. He's going to do whatever he wants. Oh, now Trump's elected. What are we going to do? They should learn that when you concentrate power like that, eventually it's going to be used against you. But they never seem to pick up on that message. So I'm hoping this will resonate with them.
It's amazing. I thought they would learn the lesson. I'm like, oh, we're going to have the left. It's going to be all about federalism again. No, they're just more rabid for power than ever before. I was like, there goes my pipe dream.
I know. It's always, we just have to get the power back so that we can punish the other side.
And when I talk to conservatives, they say the same thing. Like, oh, if we get this person in power, we can do this, this, and that. And I'm like, you realize, like, they want to solve some social issue, probably an issue I agree, abortion or something, or maybe not. That's not the right example, but I'm like, you realize you're just giving arbitrary power to the government to define some social institution. Like, you're like, if we get the power, we can do. He's like, well, now put someone else in control there, and they'll do the opposite. I don't know. Both sides make the mistake. The left seems to be more rabid about it right now, though.
They definitely have a greater tendency towards concentration of power, although both sides do it for sure. Terry was sharing an article earlier about judicial term limits, saying that if we limited justices to 18-year terms instead of lifetime terms, people wouldn't get so worked up about it because it wouldn't be the end of the world. It wouldn't be for the rest of their lives. It wouldn't be 50 years of judicial precedent. It'd only be 18 years. And she thought that might reduce the anxiety about these appointments. I am unconvinced by this argument because I see how upset people get about presidential elections, which are only for 4 years. And I don't think the voters kind of comprehend the difference between 18 years and 50 years in the same way they don't comprehend the difference between $1 billion and $1 trillion. It's all just too long. It's all too much power. And so I don't really think it would do anything. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I've heard the argument before from I don't think he's loved in libertarian circles, but Mark Levin, and in his one book he wrote a couple years ago, The Liberty Amendments, where he's arguing for a constitutional convention. One of his proposals is 12-year term limits for the judges, and each in sets of 3, they're on 4-year rotation. So every 4 years, 3 are exiting and 3 new are being appointed. So then you think every president at least gets a crack at appointing 3.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the interesting thing about it is that the retirements would be predictable, whereas now you never know when a judge is going to go, or the deaths. And so that might have an impact on how people cast votes in elections, because they know, this election we're going to replace 2 justices. That's these 2 that have a certain ideological bent. So we have to elect the president who will replace them with the same ideology or with a different ideology. I don't know. I don't know if it would make a difference or not.
I think the one easy fix I want, and maybe it won't make a difference, maybe it's just how much I hate authority and authority figures at times. I would like to just get rid of the black robes. I think somehow you put on a black robe, it's like wearing, as Thomas Massey says, the congressional pin. Just sit up there in a suit. You're not that special. Do your job.
Put them all in
I think it would
Hawaiian
remove
shirts.
a lot of the aura around the judges. Like,
yeah,
here
maybe
comes the black robes.
Yeah, it does seem like they're these like mystical elders from. We're going to pronounce the law from on high.
Yeah, they're going to do some chant. They're going to open a book. It's going to get smoky. And then they're going to tell us what the Book of Enlightenment's about to tell me. And I'm like, I don't buy this.
No, I don't think so.
So outside of that, from a pro-life perspective, I am 100% pro-life as a Catholic. So I'm a little bit excited about I would love a very pro-life judge. Although I disagree with a lot of my conservative friends, I don't think Roe v. Wade's getting overturned.
I would be very surprised. I think it's such a kind of cultural institution, and has been precedent for so long. I mean, judges put a lot of stock into precedent, which I don't think they should necessarily, but they do. And I just don't see them overturning a decision that groundbreaking and that major. It seems like a very long shot in my view.
Yeah. So I have a lot of friends who are like, oh, we're going to get Amy Coney Barrett and they're going to overturn it. I'm like, Republicans have had a staggering majority of the last Supreme Court appointments. I cannot remember the exact number. It's like 13 of 15 or something like that, but fact check me. And at a couple points when Trump took office, you had the Senate and Congress. They did nothing with pro-life. So I was like, I just don't see it. But I still, for my own personal beliefs there, I would like to see a very pro-life judge. But
Yeah,
we'll get one. We're gonna get one.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna get one. But I don't think Roe versus Wade is going anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I mean, they're like I said, they're threatening riots. They just took down the barricades around the statue of Lincoln in Lincoln Park, which is near where I live in D.C. And I'm terrified that's going to get torn down now because they just took down the barricades and everyone's threatening things. But it's going to be an interesting 6 weeks until the election.
I think the riots will play into Trump's hands for the re-election. But yeah, we'll see if the Democrat leaders can control the mob. But I think it's going to get crazy.
Yeah, I think so too. But we'll be back next week and find out how crazy it got.
Revisit this.
Thank you.
Cheers, sir.
Cheers.